It's time for News You Need. News You Need is a look at current events and how they affect the college community and beyond. And now here's the host of News You Need, Dr. Ed Simpson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We had a break last week, where everybody was off on fall break, and that went well. We broke well over fall. I'm looking at our panel today, and beautiful day. The weather has broken. The humidity is gone. Beautiful blue skies here at USM. And as usual, we are here talking with the best humans in the whole world, which is our USM students. And Dr. Hale is joining us today. Thank you, Dr. Hale. So why are we here? Well, this is the show where we talk about what's in the news, and the reason we care is that your society needs to make a variety of decisions. And the only way for you to make intelligent decisions about what the direction you want your communities to go is to consume the news, find out what's going on, find out what decisions need to be made. So we're going to be talking today about what's in the news, and I suspect we're going to spend some time on the election, is what I suspect. But let's start with introducing yourself. Tell us again your hometown, major, where you're from, what student group you're with, and we'll check in on our student groups. And we have a special guest today, Lillian, who is our show's producer. She's stepping in today. So let's go ahead and start.
Well, it's an honor to be here. My name is Liam Cronin. I'm a freshman here on campus. I'm from Clinton, Mississippi, and I lived in Clinton for a while before I moved to Toronto, and now I'm back, and it's good to be back on the panel. I'm studying political science, and I'm a member of the speech and debate team.
Excellent.
Oh, my turn. Got you.
Yep.
I'm Lillian. I'm the producer of News You Need. I guess the group that I'm with is Southern Miss Radio today. I'm from Kansas, Mississippi, and my major is communication studies.
Yep, and you're graduating
December.
and that's crazy.
Not too crazy. I've been here long enough.
I know, you're ready to go. All right, I got you.
All right, I'm Brent Hale. I'm back again, here ready to co-host this thing and maybe say some stuff along the way.
Excellent. Okay, well, so both of you that listen to this show on a regular basis know that this semester has been pretty much all about the election all the time. So we've had a regular group of students here talking about the election and what our students are thinking about. So let's just go ahead and kick it off. So we are 18 days away. This is hard to even fathom. We are 18 days away from D-Day, which is Election Day. All of the polls are relatively consistent, actually, with it's about a dead heat, almost as it's a statistical dead heat for sure. But even when you get inside the numbers, it looks like it's a real coin toss between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. So really interesting stuff going on. Real quick, we'll say this a couple times today, but next Thursday evening at 6 p.m. in Stout Hall, we will be doing a very special live News You Need with a panel of faculty and students to talk about the election. Love to see everybody in the community come out, and let's have a good discussion about what direction our country will be going. So let's kick it off. So tell me, panel, what are our students talking about when it comes to election? What's anything reaching through to our students?
I think that something that's interesting is being talked about a lot is the interview that happened. I'm not sure who hosted it. Was it Fox News that hosted it?
Yeah, Brett Baer on Fox News.
Yes, with Kamala Harris. And for me, I'm relatively independent. I'm not, super far swinging on either side of the spectrum. I'm a pretty neutral guy. But I will say this week I was actually doing a discussion post about how the media has gone it's convinced people to go so far on both sides of the spectrum. And for me, that was super prevalent this week after that interview because so many people were saying so many negative things about her. And then so many people were saying great things about her. And it seemed like no one could actually just point out things that were just pretty overall positive. It had to be either something that was amazing and destroyed Trump, or it had to be something that was terrible and made her look like a fool. And I just am not about that. I'm not going to lie. I try to look at the overall positive message of it, but that interview is hot right now.
Interesting. Okay.
I mean, I agree. There's a lot of, I wouldn't say he say, she say, but that's really what it is. It's like, it's so much going on. And like for us students trying to wrap our head around everything, deciding are we Republican, or Democrat, it's it's like we can't take it so far without having conflict in between. Like, which side do we actually choose when we go to the polls November 7th?
Really interesting.
Yeah, we find ourselves in a position where, honestly, our media ecosystem has become so polarizing. Where when you look at what was happening in that interview, it was so fighty. Like, it was, let's see, I don't want you to get to say what you want to say, and so we're going to keep trying to get gotchas in there. And it was interesting that the one point where the interviewer just kind of stops is when she's starting to get angry. And that was on purpose, right? Because if you can get someone really angry, you get a soundbite out of that, this is going to be great. And I think she handled that really well, that particular moment. But it was so frustrating to see how just aggravating the two of them were at each other during the interview. It was very, very frustrating to see that, as opposed to really trying to have a talk about something.
Yeah.
A good example of that would be when they were talking about border policy, and they were asking her about border policy, what she's done, what she plans to do. And she actually brought up that they did indeed try to get a border policy rolling, but then it got shut down by, she claimed, Trump's administration or Trump's influence. And a lot of people said, well, Trump wasn't in office. How in the world could he have shut down that policy? But they completely skip over the word influence. And so she really did try to respond to the question, but people are like, oh my gosh, she just jumped over. She doesn't have a plan. So I think that those are legitimate arguments that just get blown out of proportion.
Yeah.
What was interesting, though, was the fact that she went.
That's what I was just about to say. Oh my gosh, I was getting there.
Sorry.
But yeah, I think it's really interesting that she went, because it was so much like, oh, nobody thinking she's going to show up. Because I think it was something that Trump did. He was like, he's not going to do the interview because they're going to fact check him on everything he says. So he turned down an interview. I don't know if it was with Fox News specifically, but I was like, I mean, she's showing up and she's showing out. Like, even if it was like two toddlers fighting at that moment, she really stood her ground. I really think she did a good job with that interview.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually unable to see the full interview because I'm a cable cutter. I cut my cable a long time ago, not a long time ago, about a year ago now. So I was not able to watch the full interview. But I think it is interesting that she showed up. I also think it might be interesting why she showed up, right? So if you look at the polls and where she's losing, I do wonder if our students are engaged in this, right? So where is her gap with voters? Have you guys looked into that?
I haven't.
When you refer to gap, could you...
Yeah.
Like
so
where it's close or where she's trailing behind?
Where she's trailing behind. Like in what demographic does Trump have the major advantage? So males, right? Yeah. So she's losing among males. She is losing, not losing. Her advantage among African American men is less than even Joe Biden had. So this idea of a woman serving as president appears to be having some issues out there in election land. And one reason to go on Fox News might be to address these white guys out there that are uncomfortable with a black woman being president.
Well, and we know right now that from the polling, it seems to suggest that the best path is going to be through Pennsylvania, it's going to be through Michigan, and through Wisconsin, I believe. So, like, that is where she's going to have to get those folks.
Yeah, so so we'll talk about the electoral map on the other side of the break.
Since 1927, the Student Prince has been a direct conduit to USM students. Get your share of the more than $600 million USM brings into South Mississippi by advertising your business or service in the Student Prince. To find out more about how to advertise in the Student Prince, email sm2sales@usm.edu.
Estos son los sonidos de una cena que casi no sucedió. Es una cena servida gracias a personas como tú. Debido a la crisis actual, 50 millones de personas pueden vivir con hambre este año. Feeding America está ayudando a los que más lo necesitan. Y si quieres, tú puedes ayudar también. Visita feedingamerica.org/en-español. Patrocinado por el Ad Council y Feeding America, la fuerza de 200 bancos de alimentos.
And we are back, and we're actually, through the break, we were continuing to talk about the path to victory for both candidates. Really interesting, right? So we do not have a democracy in this country, which people tend to forget. We have a republic. So it's not a direct popular vote. In fact, 3 out of the last 4 presidential elections were not decided by the popular vote. It was decided in the Electoral College. And the way you get the Electoral College is you add up all the electoral votes from the individual states. That's where we get this idea of a swing state, this idea that some states will go Republican one election cycle and then it'll go Democrat the next election cycle. So there's about 6 swing states currently, although some are a little swingier than others. And so what, Brent, you were talking about, this idea that that gap in demographics is going to be glaring in some of these swing states.
Absolutely, yeah. So what we know right now, at least based off of polling, put a caveat on that, the way that polling tends to be going recently, that the most likely path for Harris is going to be through the Rust Belt. And that does mean having to appeal to these white working class voters, especially men. And so the idea of appearing on Fox News makes a lot of sense, trying to get to those people who we know will be watching that sort of program. And as you were referring to, this kind of interesting weakness among black voters is making states like Georgia as well as Arizona look a little bit less in play than maybe we would have expected. More Trump leaning than probably originally thought. Again, comparing that to what Biden's numbers look like. So yeah.
Do you guys see a gap, a similar gender gap among our students? That our male students tend to go more Trumpy, and our female students tend to go more Harrisy?
I mean, I can only speak for my demographic, but I would say that we have a lot of males, from my perspective now, that are supporting Harris. Now, I mean, on this campus is not so broad where we can say, okay, well, this campus is fully Trump, this campus is fully Harris. So it's not really okay, we can go ahead and decide is it more males, is it more females? But I think overall, it's definitely going to be a fight for her to get those male voters. We're pushing, a lot of my organizations that I'm on exec board for are pushing for I mean, it's kind of over now because you can't sign up to vote, but you can't register to vote.
Right.
But when we were doing those tablings and things like that, we did notice it was more females registering. So I'm not going to say that it's not a lot of males that are leaning towards Trump, but it's more males that aren't registered to vote, if that makes sense. So they don't take the time, they think it's not worth their time. So it may be the males that give the gap for everybody.
Interesting.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you on that. I think that we have it's amazing how diverse our campus is. So I agree that you can really, section it out and divide it off and say, these are who vote for this person, etc. But I will say that I feel like this election, there's a big focus within our student body on women's rights, especially with abortion. And so I feel like that is huge. And with the males, it's kind of whoever wins.
Yeah.
If Kamala wins, she's pushing. I'm not a homeowner, and so she's pushing for first-time homeowners to get a grant or a loan that's forgivable, stuff like that. That I'm like, that wouldn't be terrible. And then Trump's also pushing for other policies. And I'm like, okay, that wouldn't be horrific either for me.
I mean, she is trying to give us a tax break too. So
exactly.
Well,
groceries are getting a little expensive.
And I've been around a long time,
Exactly.
and I've watched a lot of presidential campaigns. I'm not sure I've ever seen a candidate come out with such a blatant vote for me as announcing a $1 million loan program for black men.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not $1 million. It's she wants to give out
Disclaimer.
$20,000 forgivable loans to black men to start a business. 1 million of them. So do the math on that, whatever that is. But I'm not sure I've ever seen anything quite that. Hey, I need you guys to vote for me. But I'm not saying it's a terrible idea. It might be a good idea.
I think it's gonna end up like the PPP loans, and then everybody's gonna end up going to jail. So I'm not really looking at that part.
You're just not trusting
No,
it.
I
You're
don't
not
trust
Not
that
alone
one.
in that consensus either. So I think it was actually in Pennsylvania. I haven't had time to totally look into it, but Obama was there and he was speaking. And apparently there were some things that were said that got, a real spark going. And I don't know if you guys follow sports, but Stephen A. Smith, I love him. He's a big sports broadcaster. And he went on his show, and he is African American, and he just lit into Obama for the comment that he made. And it was really interesting. So you're not alone in that consensus, and that was a really interesting point. So,
Well, what did Obama
Yeah,
say?
they had to do some smoothing over after.
I don't
his-
remember what Obama said that was so.
I'm trying to
upsetting.
find it.
He
Yeah,
essentially suggested that, I mean, I hate to put words into his mouth, but he essentially suggested that black men were struggling with the idea of voting for a woman.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I mean,
And,
I
like-
agree. I agree with that. I think all men are struggling with the dynamic of women in
think that-
power.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
It was just
Right.
interesting. Stephen A. Smith, I believe he brought up the point that he specifically he's an African American of much influence. I mean, Obama's done so much great, and he kind of expressed the idea that they brought him on just to persuade specifically African American
Oh,
voters
no
who
question.
are male.
No question.
And he raised a question in that, and then also with what was said. Now, was it wrong what he said? Possibly not. Maybe the gap really is there, like you mentioned. It's just the idea that she said, "Okay, this is how we'll do it."
Okay.
It's a little bit of an interesting tactic,
Right.
It's like saying, let's bring Michael Jordan on, and it'll be a better turnout. But it's like, what are you getting at?
I mean, it could have all been a publicity stunt as well, because all publicity is good publicity, if that makes sense. Because either way, you're gonna get people talking. So they got people talking.
It was
Yeah,
It's all
well,
bone. They were like,
well,
okay.
it's,
It was interesting.
it's one of these. So that's a bigger, much deeper topic
Yeah.
about this idea of getting people talking. That actually came up a couple of weeks ago in the J.D. Vance thing, with folks eating, folks in Ohio eating cats, whatever it was, and they actually went out and talked to some of the Republican folks, and they defended those comments by saying, "Well, look, we're talking about the immigration issue. So in other words, it's okay to say anything you want, however hurtful, harmful it is, as long as it gets attention." I mean, I wonder if that's where we are right now.
I
But
really
anyway,
think we are.
we can talk more about that a lot later.
I wish
So
it wasn't,
this
but-
idea of a very close election, and I do think we forget about this, right, is the 2016 election was decided by 62,000 people across 3 states. The 2020 election, despite Joe Biden winning the popular vote by almost 5 million votes, actually the spread among the states was about 120,000 put Joe Biden in office. So when you talk about how close this is, and you're talking about Obama speaking to black men in Detroit, Michigan is a swing state, you're talking about trying to persuade a couple thousand people in each state. Think about that. So how do our students look that closely at the race, or is it really just more whether I vote or not?
I think we're more looking at Mississippi as a whole, because I mean Mississippi has this history. We'll say it like that. So with Roe versus Wade being overturned, and a lot of attention being on women's rights and making sure that we get our rights back, it's just we're focused on making sure that we are voting in Mississippi and making sure that we're sharing as much information that we can to get everyone else to vote and to be on one accord.
It does seem to be that way, and the conversations that I have, it really is more about like getting people to care enough to show up and vote, which we know is a national issue. It's something that a lot of people are working on right now. It's not so much about trying to trying to get the swing voters over to your side. It's more about just getting people to show up.
That's right. It is all about turnout right now. So this idea of Mississippi being a ruby red state, do our students care about that? This idea, it's not really a race in Mississippi. We know it's going to go for Trump. We don't know how much it's going to go to Trump. And there's not a whole lot of down ballot races this time. So what do our students think about that idea?
For me, it's just kind of something that I've, I guess, accepted to a point that, yes, it is important to talk about your beliefs. Yes, it is important to have your ideology. But then when you think of our state as a whole, it's something that I've kind of come to accept that we live in Mississippi. I mean, it's going to be a red state, and the day that it is a blue state, I will be very surprised. But I've kind of just come to accept that it is a red state.
I think I've kind of accepted it's going to be a red state as well, but I'm very hopeful that it can make a turn this year. I know that we have our history, like I said, in Mississippi, so I think with the turnout we have had with getting people registered to vote, we may see a little purple, a little mix.
Yeah,
Okay.
I will say that this year, I mean, tons of people showed
Yeah.
out. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was this year more than there has been in the past.
Well, that's what generally you start watching for, right? Is you look for the trends, and it's a little bit difficult sometimes for a highly contested race, and then you say, well, next time it'll be the same results. You don't know that.
Right.
So let me throw a couple of specifics at you. So, Trump this week said he was the father of IVF, in vitro fertilization. Did you guys catch that?
I did not.
So what do we think about that?
Good for him.
Yeah, good for him. Yeah. So, which is funny. In the same interview, he said, "Well, I didn't know what it was until a female senator called him and said, this is what I did." So then he declares himself the in vitro fertilization. So this is the issue of states like Alabama saying that if you fertilize an embryo, that is a child and therefore has all the rights of a human being, which basically puts an end to in vitro fertilization. Do our students care? Is that in the weeds for them?
I haven't really heard about that, honestly. So I don't really know.
I was gonna say that it's probably kind of mixed in with the women's rights and abortion topic. That it's kind of because every time I hear abortion come up, usually that's thrown in with it. But it seems that people care less about that and more about abortion, which I do think that both are extremely important. And like I've talked about in the past, like there's both extreme sides to it. And so I wouldn't say that I find myself on either extreme side. I understand that there are circumstances. And so with IVF, I think, is IVF correct?
IVF.
I do think that it is important. So is that something that they're talking about getting rid of completely within the Trump administration?
No. In fact, the opposite. I mean, he's going all in on. He wants to protect the. He's in favor of abortion to protect the life of the mother in the cases of rape and incest, which many in his party are not. Interestingly, he's in favor of IVF. Some in his party are not.
Yeah, that's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
that's-
So it's really kind of interesting. So on the other side, Kamala announces her help for new homeowners or home buyers, but she has been almost completely silent on student loans, which was a major Biden campaign promise. So what do our students think about this idea that Kamala is not revisiting the student loan issue?
I would just say that when all of this came about, my mom had came to me and she was like, "You're graduating at the right time." I was like, "What do you mean?" She was like, "You'll probably be the last of many to get the loan forgiveness." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So for Kamala not to mention it anymore, it makes me nervous for the students that are having trouble affording college already and have taken out a bunch of loans.
Yeah.
In
And
their
so
future.
we'll pick up with student loans on the other side of the break.
Did you know? 1 in 10 Mississippians are unable to vote due to a felony conviction. In 2021, Mississippi had the second highest incarceration rate in the country, with blacks making up 61% of the prison population. Mississippi Votes is committed to helping people get their voting rights back. Call now at 1-833-678-4321. This message is brought to you by Mississippi Votes, the Mississippi Association of Broadcasters, and this station.
Southern Miss Radio and T-Bone's Records and Cafe team up to bring you the pick of the litter. That's a new CD we both think is significant and worthy of support. When you purchase the pick of the litter at T-Bone's Records and Cafe, you are not only getting a great new CD at a discount, but part of your price goes to Southern Miss Radio. Support your community radio station and partake in great music at the same time.
Hot dog!
The Pick of the Litter is the new album from Remy Wolf, entitled Big Ideas, featuring the song Soup. The Southern Miss Radio, T-Bone's Records and Cafe Pick of the Litter. Great music at a discount to help Southern Miss Radio.
So yeah, we're still on the election just a little bit, and student loans. The fact that the Harris campaign has really not revisited that, has not made it a campaign plank the way Joe Biden did. Our students, they kind of understand, or they just say, gave it a shot, we don't care.
think it's something that's been around for so long that people kind of just say, like we'll figure out how to deal with it. We didn't have it before, and looks like we're not going to have it now. I will say that I think that there should be kind of a push for education in that field, because my dad, he is deaf. He went to school, he racked up a lot of loans, and then he actually was, as someone kind of told him about it and explained to him, that if he worked for a government entity for X amount of years, that they would pay off all of his schooling, including his master's. And so my father, who's a deaf individual, who people would say maybe wouldn't be capable of certain things, was able to go graduate with his master's and go and get that paid off because he was educated by someone else that showed him that path. And it's worked out great for him. And so I think that there are ways about it where if you really want to get rid of that loan, you can. You just have to be willing to maybe go a different route. But that raises the question is, are people forced to go a different route in the hopes of paying off that debt? But there is ways to go about it. You can get that loan forgiven.
I mean, it's people didn't get it paid off before, and I've noticed a trend of a lot of people, especially young people, starting businesses and stuff like that. And that's one of their primary goals, is to pay off their student loan. So I feel like the whole thing about education, like people are still valuing education, no doubt. Like especially students or people our age, it's just like we know we need school at this point because people are 30, 40 years old getting, HR positions that have no schooling, but they have just worked in that field for 20-something years, and, we're going to school for it. So we might as well use our degree for something. But speaking of school, just wanted to throw this in. It is homecoming week.
Yep.
Some exciting events are happening tonight. I think the Hall of Fame thing is happening. The Alumni Hall of Fame. We got MPHC Step Show tonight. And tomorrow is, of course, the game and the tailgate. So if y'all have time.
Yeah, we didn't even really talk about homecoming. That's always big every year. I try to avoid as much of it as I can. Generally, I'm successful in that. Yeah, so absolutely. Everybody come out tonight. And the Step Show is tonight.
Yes.
And do you know where that is?
It's going to be in Bennett Auditorium at 7:30.
7:30?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's always exciting. Go see it, everybody. Okay, so just on changing topics real quick with our last few minute and a half here. Did our students catch that NASA launched its first mission to Mars in 10 years this week?
I did not catch
Isn't that exciting? I mean, isn't that interesting, right?
That's awesome.
So as we watch the whole world kind of descend into this bizarre siloed chaos, folks everywhere are kind of doing their jobs, right?
Yeah.
Including launching rockets to Mars. So we didn't catch that?
Maybe NASA's finally going to take their step over SpaceX.
There you go.
Well, having said that, SpaceX also had a good moment this week where they actually were able to catch that rocket booster.
Oh, that was
Oh.
amazing. Did you guys catch that?
I
Oh
did.
my gosh. So that was been the holy grail of space travel, is to reuse the parts, right?
Oh,
So,
that
and
is
SpaceX
cool.
had designed the rocket to where it'll return to the launch pad once it's done. And it
cool.
actually worked, if you believe it. Do you believe it, Brent? You saw the
That it
video?
worked. Yeah, I watched it.
Yeah, okay, I'm
It was
with you.
awesome. I mean, this is an
I'm not
amazing
spreading
piece
theories.
of
I'm not-
technology. And my dream of leaving you all and going to Mars is alive.
It's there. No, I hear you. There's no homework on Mars.
I think
Not
a
at
lot of
all.
the political news is keeping us distracted.
Well, okay, real quick. I know
Literally.
we're going to end here real quick. The economy is surging. You guys doing okay?
No.
No.
Man, what kind of question is that to close out?
No. Okay. Well, I thought it was one more good news. Okay, so we have another great show in the bank. Thank you, panel. I really, really appreciate it. Our producer is Lillian. Hello, Lillian. You're here. So thank you for that. Our videographer is Blake, and our engineer is Triderica Winters. Thank you. This has been a production of Southern Miss Student Media.
This has been News You Need with Dr. Ed Simpson. News You Need airs Friday afternoon at 12:30 on Southern Miss Radio.